Turn this bus around.
Yeah,
We're going back.
Oh my God! All right, Ryan, let's kick it off.
Wait, is it streaming? Okay, now I got numbers.
Getting some
numbers. Levels.
All right, now I got to turn on LinkedIn.
You gotta
click Goldberg.
Can you narrate your whole job just so we know how much you do? Because I feel like you do a lot of things behind the scenes.
I've tried doing it. I tried. He took a week
off.
Well,
I found that I try to add LinkedIn to go live, when I hit the button and do it all beforehand, but then it never works and I have to restart it anyway. So that I just wait, we'll go live, then I'll add it and then it works. So it's, I don't know. I hate LinkedIn. Their stuff never works as far as streaming.
You have to pay for LinkedIn Premium. It's like Tinder where you can just direct message people without them matching with you.
You get all of the magic premium stuff.
LinkedIn is actually the polar opposite of Tinder if you really think about it.
I added some cool new skills to my stuff just so people could
on Tinder.
On Tinder? On Tinder.
On Tinder.
Please clarify.
What skills did you add to your Tinder/LinkedIn profile that's shared?
Yes.
Mustache skills.
Let me add another one.
That should be like a way to prove your identity is you have to link your Tinder.
Nice.
Oh, this is not good.
All right. Well, let's go live. I'm rolling it.
Beautiful finger footage.
No, not the Halloween one. We did that already.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security talking about news. My name is John Strand. In this episode, our notable stories that we're going to be going through is Google, Meta, and Discord are joining up to fight child abuse, which I think is actually good. Data brokers' staggering sale of sensitive data. Highly invasive backdoor snuck into open source packages again. UK lays out new rules for the internet, like anyone's going to follow those. Blaine, he's a pain. Continental liar from the state of Maine, whose data has now been breached due to a data breach in the state of Maine. Boeing data is finally, after 3 long weeks, is finally being published by Lockbit. We'll dig into that. And then we also have another story about how Denmark's critical infrastructure has been subject to attacks. And I would like to start. If you don't mind, we can jump into the Boeing data to talk about the news. We have Kelly, who's not just throwing hand grenades from the crowd. She's joined us. Thank you very much for joining. We got the VP of CATS. We've got Wade. We've got Ryan. We've got Help Desk. And we have Alex. So I'm going to throw this right at you, Corey, or I guess Ralph. Have you looked at the data that's coming out of Boeing yet, now that it's been released? Or is there anything more about what this data actually is?
I can't comment. I'm downloading it right now. But
I was going to say it's coming down.
How much is it? Are we looking at? Do we actually have confirmed size of it now?
That's a good question.
It's a tremendous amount, but I don't know.
So many plain schematics.
Why'd you have to pick this article first, John? I wasn't ready.
Jumbo amount.
Jumbo amount.
I would say the size of the data is between
a
737 and a 777.
Oh, 777. That wide body, man. That's a lot of data.
Make sure your computer doesn't crash while you download it.
It's no 747.
It's not as much as an Airbus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because that one will get you off the ground.
No, it totally won't. Well, we can jump back. Let's come back to this one.
Back to this.
Let's go ahead and let's talk about it. I want to say that I think that this is a good story where Google, Meta, and Discord and others are teaming up to fight child abuse online.
This kind of ties in with a couple weeks, or was it last week when we were talking about AI generated stuff?
Yes.
That was kind of depressing.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago, yeah.
I'd love to get you all's opinion, but I think that this is actually a good thing, mainly because there's so much that happens where predators will engage with their victims in one platform and then have them move to another platform. And they're able to see that jump and they're able to see that correlation. They're able to share the tactics that are being used. I think this is good, but Alex, do you want to speak to this? Because if there's going to be a negative to this, I'm sure that you have a pretty good understanding of the space of OSINT, open source, the intelligence, how the techniques are being used. What are your thoughts on this, sir?
Yeah, so my thoughts on this, I'm just looking at the company names up there, but yeah, that's absolutely, a necessity in order to triangulate. And we've had these types of discussions with organizations that work against child sexual abuse material, and they do say that it's like the information that TraceLab puts together in order to kind of triangulate. Uh, they gave the predators absolutely do this, that they find these sites that they can drive a wedge between their targeted victim and their families, and then move them to other platforms. So seeing all of that information.
Wait.
Go ahead.
What's this about a wedge in their families? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So a lot of times they try to have their targets basically rely on them for communications. Sort of as hey, if you're struggling with relationships, struggling with your homework, struggling with all these other things, and you're posting online, this gets picked up by the child predators going, you clearly don't have that support network. I will be that support network. Oh, and by the way, let's go move over to this other platform where we can talk.
So in other words, all of these platforms are kind of like the feeder seed platforms. Because whenever we're talking about other platforms, a lot of times we're talking about like encrypted platforms. We're trying to get any data out of it is far more difficult, correct?
That's correct. So seeing these kind of come together and identify people, like an example would be like runaways, where it's like you're posting, thinking about running away. Someone goes, hey, I'm a fellow 15-year-old girl. I also have these types of things. I worked with this person. They're awesome. Like, hey, let's go hang out, grab a coffee together. They start the communications offline. The person goes and like gets in the vehicle with the person that they think is going to go take them to meet this 15-year-old friend. And then they're gone.
Yeah. And that's an absolute worst case scenario, right?
Yep.
But that includes like kidnapping and things like that. Ben from KC also pointed out, also picked up by it's also a good technique for picking up extremist and recruitment for that as well. I think that's pretty good. Now there have been some, like, let's say snafus with this, right? I mean, if we go back historically, if you remember, Apple was going through and tagging any of the images that they would find for illegal images. And if I remember correctly, there was one of the reasons why they stopped it is there was a story of a father that was taking pictures of one of their kids' genitals for like an infection or something, and it was sending it to a doctor, and it kicked off a whole big investigation.
That was a Google one, actually.
Was that a Google one?
Yeah, so that was one where Google actually completely just blocked their entire Google account, just nuked it from orbit, and then they had no recourse to get in touch with them and be like, hey, like, can I have all my emails and life back? And they're like, nah.
No, it was Google.
Yeah.
So I think that whole collateral damage is going to be, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. To see how those language models work and the AI behind it actually works. But it is good to see all of them working together. It's just, am I the only one that looks at this and like, no, there's going to be some type of nefarious edge that these companies are.
No, it's called Lantern. It's fine.
It's Lantern.
There's no baggage with that name.
Speaking of which, do you want to know something absolutely horrifying? Of
yes
naming
and no.
apps. So I was at Lowe's the other day and I went back to the restroom and I could see into the employee break room. And Lowe's timesheet software that all of their employees keep track of their time is an app called Kronos, which sounds like a really good name for an app.
It's from The Incredibles. We've seen it.
Do you know what Kronos did with his children?
He ate them.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that's just a good warning for those people that read books and work at Home Depot.
Should we? Zeus malware should come in and kill Kronos. Is that what you're saying?
Probably.
And
then the malware will be in control at that point. And yay was the dawn of the new gods. But like I said, I think that this is good that they're working together. I just hope that we don't find out. It's like they actually use this as a way to be more invasive, to get you more ads, to sell you more things.
So it is interesting. So it kind of is like the whole concept of like the ban waves of, I don't know if anyone, like, this has randomly been in my YouTube algorithm lately, but like talking about how other Blizzard and other game developers, when they ban like malicious accounts, they ban them in waves. So like every 6 months or every 3 months or whatever it is. And they do this so that attackers can't vary their techniques to like not be detected. So it's like, instead of like if you logged in and then it detected you as a bot and immediately banned you, you'd be like, okay, what changed? What did I do?
Yeah.
So, but whereas with this, it's the same thing where it's like if you get banned, you're going to get banned from Facebook, Instagram, whatever other sites all at once, and you're not going to know like which activity on which platform, depending on how you're using the accounts or whatever. So it's like actually, potentially could impact people. And I don't think usually child predators are known for great OPSEC. So like, why is my uncle's social media profiles all taken down? Like, oof. So yeah, I mean, I don't know like how it'll pan out, but at the very least, it does seem like an obvious thing that if your profile was banned from Instagram for CSAM and then you just have like a Facebook or a LinkedIn or whatever, it seems like maybe you shouldn't at that point. Like you've been proven that you probably shouldn't be using the social media.
I'm
at all.
surprised the only video game in here is Roblox, right? Roblox is huge.
That was shocking, especially. Stuff, right? But wait, if we back up, you're right about that. That's like the only video game, but almost all video games are like people in communities are using Discord. So that's kind of how I looked at it. But you're right. There's a ton of video games that have their own in-chat systems that are like.
The reason is because on video games, the kids are the ones abusing the adult. No, way too soon.
Oh,
yeah.
If they threw like Xbox and the PlayStation Network on there too, right, and then just linked all those together, they all are just about able to talk to each other now, anyways. But
yeah,
it's probably just they're late to the party. They'll probably jump on it if it's good. I feel like it's one of those things that needs like exec level approval, and the execs are like, well, if he's going to do it, I'll do it, and like if George from Microsoft does it, then I'll do it. But then like they're just waiting, and it's going to be this domino effect. Once they start, oh, you're really missing the bus here, then the other companies will jump on it.
I think there's another sinister angle to this as well.
Yay! That's what I was hoping for. Sinister angles. Thank you, Kelly.
I know we want to talk about the tech and everything, but I think the question that I was asking as I was reading it was, why are the tech companies doing this? Well, let's take it take a step back here and look at, I don't know if you all remember the Earn IT Act of 2022, but this was back when Trump was in the White House, I think. I kind of mix up my administrations. But the Earn IT Act in 2022 was a federal response, proposed legislation to cut down on child predators and sexual impropriety online. But they went really super far, really trying to limit technology and kind of almost step on the toes of Section 230. And for those of us in the audience who aren't familiar with that, remember Section 230 allows publishers or internet service providers to be considered publishers and free from legal liability with exceptions. They're not allowed to publish copyrighted material. They're not allowed to publish improper or immoral or stuff that's deemed obscene. But the tech companies didn't want the government to come in and tell them how to do their job. So I think that's why we have this response of the Lantern framework, is because they wanted to kind of say, hey, we're doing something. We don't need legislation to tell us how to do it.
And it is. So I think you're absolutely right. You managed to find the negative in this. So good job on you for that. Well done. But seriously, how in the hell do you moderate the comments, right? So if we're looking at like Twitter, we're looking at LinkedIn. We've talked about this in a number of different stories over the years. Is if you're a Twitter, if you're a Facebook, if you're a like LinkedIn to a much lesser extent, like let's set all the laws aside for a second. What level of responsibility do you have to protect your users? And this is tough, right? And Twitter took it really, really seriously. I think, Corey, you said Twitter is a content moderation company more than they are a social media company, because before Elon Musk came in and then gutted all of those functions, it was basically they were focusing on creating a space that people felt comfortable. They weren't going to get a bunch of Nazis and child porn thrown at them, right? So it's good business to not have that on your platform, but there's going to be a line of like, how much of that does a company do, and at what point are they completely negligent? And then all of a sudden they can start being held liable for it. So I really, really, really think that this is a super difficult line to walk with these social media companies, because the more you touch it, the more you take responsibility for it, the more you take responsibility for it, the more you'll have legal liability. So I don't know. I just wanted to get people's thoughts on that. Go ahead, Corey.
My take on this is that, so we've talked about it before, but like this is a monumental task to moderate. Like this is, we've all heard from the Facebook moderation team that was really, having high turnover and huge issues with like worker mental health and all that stuff. But my way of looking at this is all the companies are banding together to say, we're going to distribute this huge load of content moderation across every different company, like in small chunks. So now it's like, if I find notably objectionable content, I hash it, we run it through this Lantern program, it gets taken down everywhere else without me having to do, if I'm working for Facebook, now if someone from Discord finds CSAM material, accounts, data like hashes or images, this is automatically removed from our platform without me having to go and like also moderate that. So that's how I see it, is it's reduction of the level of moderation required for each individual company, because it's going to be spread out to every company. And if, someone over in the corner at Roblox has a report on something, they just automatically, I'm assuming it's all going to be automated because it's scaled so much. That's the only way it would ever work. Like this content's just going to be automatically removed from Facebook, accounts potentially automatically removed. Could it be poisoned? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But like the concept, if it works as implemented, is going to reduce the workload for moderation teams, in my opinion.
Do you all think it's going to help? Like if we know that Facebook, I don't want to say it was responsible, but Facebook is definitely a tool for the civil war in Ethiopia. It's definitely a huge problem in basically the genocide in Myanmar. And it's been used to actually spread multiple points of disinformation to the point where thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. I would like to think, hopefully, that what they're starting would be used beyond, and somebody had actually mentioned this earlier in the comments, that this would be used beyond the idea of just CSAM, that this would be used for other types of extremist content and views that are out there as well. I don't know what your thoughts are. Am I being too optimistic? I mean, I know that Facebook is still fighting this stuff. Fighting it can be taken in multiple different types of interpretations. But I mean, holy hell, these frameworks are being used constantly for hideous things far beyond child pornography.
Me thinking about this as like a sock puppet type of situation, do you think the cost of a pre-compromised accounts for these platforms is going to go up? So if you have, it's like having a good IP, right? Instead of a bad reputation IP. If you had some really good LinkedIn or Discord or Facebook accounts that can then prove it and then sell that moderation, I'm wondering if that's going to become more of a marketplace if this takes off, right? If they can just ban you in a wave.
Yeah. I think that building that is going to absolutely increase in value because you have to have everything pulled together. And I think what this is doing is it's looking at instances to where it's like, let's say, on Roblox, they're pretending to be that like 15-year-old girl, but hey, that gets flagged, and Discord says, well, but no, you're like, you're on over here as a 22-year-old like car mechanic, and something doesn't add up. Yeah. So building those sock puppets to say that everything lines up, and because they should be able to tell that it's like, if you truly are like a 15-year-old kid that plays Call of Duty incessantly, they should be able to see that pattern of behavior across platforms, and nothing like stands out a signal going, hey, wait a minute, no, there's things that don't line up. And I think it is like, the public kind of wants that when we see, people that are abusive online and they have a record through this platform of being abusive. And then they go, okay, well, then we see that they groomed another victim through this other platform. And, yes, the community gets upset going, well, these two should be talking to each other. And then they go, okay. So there was a reference to like Patriot Act. And I think that was the same thing. Patriot Act, people got upset that like these agencies aren't talking to each other. Okay, now let's make a fusion center, pull everything together, and it had all of that harm. I think now we're seeing that same type of thing happen.
But wait. The issue with Patriot Act, the issue with Patriot Act wasn't necessarily the idea of the fusion center, right? Yeah. I think the issue with the Patriot Act is it wasn't used, or it was very rarely used for its intended purposes of stopping terrorism. I mean, it was used for going after organized crime, and that gets into, I think, kind of piggybacking off of this. part of me is like, I would like to see this used for additional like flagging additional activities of extremist hate speech, violence, terrorism, ethnic cleansing, those types of things. Part of me is like, those almost need to be handled in a separate kind of bucket from CSAM rather than trying to roll them all together. And maybe there'll be some cross-pollination in the technologies. But either way, it's always interesting whenever they start working together to see where this actually goes.
That's where my thoughts were going, was what if all of this does get linked together, right? Slowly the anonymity of the internet is going away, right? Yeah. And this is part of that for the good, right? But when does the switch flip to make it bad?
Now, that brings up an interesting point. Whatever I've communicated with the FBI on these things, there's a lot of times that the FBI, a lot of these companies will be kind of beat up in the public for not doing more to shut down these types of illegal activities, especially with like illegal images. But talking with FBI agents, like in the past, I've had people about the FBI agents' response to the show basically saying, shh, don't talk about it, because right now they're communicating in a platform that we can see them and we can serve warrants and we can communicate with these companies and we can get them. And the more that this stuff actually gets kind of shut down in these open forums, the more it pushes them into fringe kind of encrypted places. And I'm kind of two thoughts on that. Like, one, I can understand that. I want my adversaries communicating in the open where I can watch their comms. It's like if you go back to the first Gulf War, a whole bunch of the infrastructure stayed up. Actually, the first and the second Gulf War, a bunch of the infrastructure stayed up through all of the bombings that we were doing with the United States and Iraq. And the reason why is we were in their comms, right? It didn't serve us to shut down their comms because we could see everything they were talking about. So we'd bomb all kinds of other things, but somehow the power and the infrastructure stayed up because we could see what they were doing. So law enforcement having that type of visibility, I think, is important. But I also think that if we shove them into the fringes, they start doing more encryption, we lose that visibility. But at the same time, don't you think that it would be an overall reduction in the amount of like illegal images? Or do you think it's going to be the same? They're just going to find other platforms where they're going to be quote unquote safer.
I think so. There's a couple of points that came up when other people were discussing it that I thought were worth bringing up. So number one is like in the Lantern overview on the news article, they talk about like the concept of signals. Meaning like this could be a link to a bad site, or it could be an image, or it could be various different media types. And of course, that will, I think it really will. I think the corollary drawing to the Patriot Act is a solid take because it will really depend on how it's enforced. If it's a malicious link being posted, or not a malicious, that's just a habit of me saying malicious link, but if it's an inappropriate link that's being posted in Roblox and then it gets deleted from Discord, that's an easy win, right? This link is now nuked everywhere across every platform. If every profile that pulls the link gets now nuked, now that's a massive expansion in power of the program. So it's like, it'll be interesting to see how different companies implement it. And I don't think it's going to be like nuke everything everywhere, because obviously poisoning it would be insane. If I just send a message to someone on Discord, they can get their accounts nuked everywhere else. Like that wouldn't, no.
That also gets into the SIGINT problem, right? So whenever you have an overall intelligence problem, so like in one of the it was actually child sex slavery. It was a bunch of horrible things together, but it was one ring that we actually worked against a long time ago. We were able to get inside their comms and we left them running for months. And the reason why we were letting them run for months is we were collecting a whole bunch of valuable intel on other groups they were sharing data with and who the individuals were inside of those groups. And my hope is with this Lantern project, they're working closely with law enforcement, that it isn't just a nuke it from high orbit to get it off the platform situation, but they're also going to be working and saying, okay, let's try to take this spider web and kind of enumerate it as far as we possibly can before we start taking action against it.
And multiple people in the chat, Ben from KC and Desynced, have identified the account swatting mechanism that could be in place. If I'm a malicious actor and I send CSAM to someone and now their accounts everywhere get nuked, we've got a problem, right?
Dude, but that's been happening for years. I mean, some of the earliest form of ransomware that I remember in my career was a case where someone's email, the attacker was able to get inside of somebody's email and they were threatening to shoot like illegal pornography to everyone in this person's inbox, right? And that was interesting because they didn't have access to the person's email. It was just an email that they sent threatening and saying, hey, pay me money and I won't do this. And people were paying that crap in one of the organizations I was working.
That scam's still going on, John, all over the place.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, sextortion is a whole thing. The other thing that I identified, like looking at the company list, so I think there's one that really stands out to me, and I don't know if it stands out to anyone else, but Mega is one that's like that.
Really?
So it's like, yeah,
Mega.
So
Wait,
that one really stands out to me because
really stands out. That's a good guy.
That's why it stands out. So Mega, for those that don't know what Mega is, Kim.com, is that the guy's name?
That's his name.
Yep.
So yeah, basically Mega is a file sharing service online that has previously been, let's just say, not exactly compliant with law enforcement in general. Has kind of been maybe a safe haven for maybe some of this activity in the past. So their contribution to this program and participation in the program, I think this is kind of the one that stands out to me, because if I had to guess, this is being used on a regular basis for this sort of thing. So this is a big jump for them basically into the world of, reputable tech companies, moving away from you can put anything on our platform. We don't scan, we don't submit to law enforcement. And now moving to, we're in the light. We're now submitting law enforcement information. We're now keeping logs or doing whatever differently you have to do to participate in this program. So that, I don't know. I just wanted to call that out because it's an interesting angle. Because there's a lot of other file sharing providers, by the way, and none of them are on this list. There's a lot.
So I think Google and also Discord is on there, because I believe Discord either is planning or will recently do away with some of these storage links that they cited it as malware, but I'm willing to bet that it's going to fall underneath the same aspect. They sort of said you really shouldn't be posting files on Discord anyways. We're going to nuke them. You share a file, it goes away after a little bit. They're clamping down on that, and people were sharing malware through Discord, so I'm willing to bet they're.
But there's a lot more file shares. There's
Dropbox.
There's thousands. AWS, I don't know much about the CSAM space, but I know more about malware or data breaches, really. So as an example, we know from that Microsoft Octotempest blog that they just exfil through SE. They use Google Drive and S3. They use AWS buckets, or they use Google Drive. So I don't know. I'm just saying
exfilling through into an S3 is excellent, right? Half the time it's gonna just go. Yeah, it's gonna look like normal traffic. One of the devs spun up an
100% of the time it works.
So the other thing about storage too is that, for example, Google, none of that is encrypted. Okay, so Google can read all of those files across the entire tenant space.
Right.
Right?
Which most providers are that. That's
most
true
providers are that way. But I thought was interesting that you brought this up, Corey, is that Mega actually is end-to-end encrypted, right? Mm-hmm. So they actually can't read that data. And what they're doing and what they're talking about here, and then we're talking about all the providers, is going after the sharing of files in that platform. So on Mega and everywhere else, you can share a file with anyone, right? The world. Okay. Yep. And that's what they're targeting more than they are trying to do a deep scan.
Personal account storage.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Guys, we have to move off of this one. And
This is a good one, though. It
is a good one. And Flackvest brought up a great comment that transitions us to our next story. This also makes me wonder how these companies are going to use the revenue streams. Linking people across multiple platforms is a gold mine of advertising, which brings us to our next story from Ars Technica. Ashley Bellinger, data brokers' staggering sale of sensitive information is exposed in an unsealed FTC filing. This is something we've talked about a lot at BHIS. This is an area where nation states are using malvertisements. They're using highly targeted data from data brokers in order to deploy exploits with a high level of precision. We talked about the NSO group and kind of what they're doing. We've talked about some of the stuff that we can get from data brokers, but is this just the FTC is finally catching on to this, this business model? Because a lot of this with these data brokers, it's kind of like with our internal stuff that we do with data breaches. If we opened it up and we started selling what we have access to, we could easily be considered a data broker, right? It's just basically aggregating a whole bunch of little snippets of data that are exposed all over the place, pulling it together, But what a lot of these data brokers are doing is actually purchasing large amounts of data. Like one of my favorite data sets is license plate information.
Yeah.
Where there are data brokers that you can put in a license plate, and all of your cities that have red light cameras, all of the different parking garages that have cameras where they're tracking your license plate, they're selling that shit out the back door to data brokers. And you can literally track where people are, sometimes where they are right now through that data. So this is, once again, this kind of goes into like Corey and Ralph's big thing that they do all the time, but this is the amount of data that these data brokers have is basically, in some situations, more than what the NSA would like to have, right?
I think, yeah. So we've talked about data brokers a lot on the show, and I think everyone, at least everyone in the OSINT community, and Alex, feel free to hop in here. Everyone's reaction to it is basically like, how is this legal? Like it's basically like, and I think everyone, or at least most people I talk to, feel that way, where it's like it's basically either OSINT or it's illegal. So like, I guess I'm like, go for them, FTC. Like, figure out who is. I hope they track it back to who's selling them the data, not just who. Don't stop at, what is it, Kosava or whatever. Don't stop there. Keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah, go to Verizon or Traffic Cameras Inc. or whatever it is.
Hey, this is awesome. Darren said, "I'm sure the NSA is buying the data from the brokers." No, they're not. So I'm sure they are now, but we have had some experience with different government agencies who tend to be very, very shocked at what data brokers have. And these are people that deal with a bunch of ints, and they're like, holy crap, you can get all of that for how much? I'm like, it's free or like $5. Like
It is funny though, John, because a lot of those data brokers and like a lot of these different organizations, they end up buying the same data from different people, but not sharing it amongst each other. And then they have their own like data sets, right? And just intelligence communities in general. And they share that data as part of like some, mandatory thing. And then other ways will it's wild. It's wild.
I love this. All these people like, oh, the NSA is 100%. No. Okay. So you all have to understand, okay, when you're talking about the NSA, there's a huge amount of hubris in these intelligence communities in the United States government, where they believe that the data that they have is the absolute gold standard of what data they can get, number one. Number two, a lot of this data that there's at data brokers, they can't get to it. And the reason why, or they can't collect the data because it's Blue Force data, and the NSA cannot collect that data on American citizens, right? But when you're looking at the FBI and you're looking at other agencies, they're just now, and I'm not joking, literally within the past year to 18 months, a lot of these intelligence and law enforcement communities are realizing that this shit's available to buy. Yeah. And in many ways, it's much, much, much better than the data they have. Because think about a collection platform. All right. So let's think about the intelligence community. Let's think about a satellite, right? If you're going to do SIGINT, that is a long-term financial commitment that takes billions of dollars and a lot of work to actually tie that together. And that's just like a platform that's a satellite. For any of these other platforms, when they try to bring these in, the amount of red tape that you have to go through to start getting that data is absolutely insane. So don't assume for a second that, this is all in the NSA and the NSA can pull all this crap up, because that's just not true. At least not in the way that you think it would be. So sorry, I just wanted to address.
No Moniker's comment is hilarious. It's illegal, or I'm assuming they typoed, but basically it's legal until a large company monetizes it. Like that's basically, that's basically where we're at. Like,
so they're gonna go up the ladder and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, shoot, I guess it was just Google the whole time. How are we gonna take this?
So I want to take this, and Kelly, I want to get your take on this. For a lot of these data brokers, they also include browsing, shopping data, because they collect that from multiple points of entry. So if you're looking at like Amazon is hooked into thousands and thousands of websites. So they can get your browsing history. Many times they can piece together your medical history. They can piece together a lot about you. Can you explain to me why this is not PHI and protected under HIPAA?
Short answer, no, I can't. But I will answer by saying it's part of our American ethos, where the company that collects the data owns the data. And I know we all kind of wrung our hands a little bit when GDPR came out, but the the essence of GDPR says that privacy is a fundamental human right. And until I think we address that as a community, we're still going to be seeing large amounts of our data being stolen and sold, regardless if it's PII or PHI or P whatever I.
See, and that's the part that really bothers me about this whole thing. Like, if you look at what my hospital collects on me from like the appointments and things that I go, there's a whole bunch of different protections and rules around that. And we can talk about the efficacy of that. But I do believe that it definitely limits extensively the amount of like data that's being sold outside of the healthcare system. But if somebody was like, John, I'm going to give you two choices. Either A, I'm going to leak your entire medical history or your browser history. I'm like, medical history. And I think that almost anybody that's in here, and I'd love to get it from the comments, would you rather have your browser history or your medical history dumped? Because people are going to be like, man, that guy's really into My Little Pony or something. I don't know.
John, which browser? I've got so many browsers.
Which browser? See, but that's just in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter, right? Because they can track that in a variety of different ways, right?
So, Alex, I want to get your take as someone in the OSINT community. What do you think about the data brokers and all this stuff?
So I think my thoughts on like the data brokers, what was rattling around in my head was the, they're transacting things that they might not feel were stolen. That it's sort of, you gave this voluntarily to the hospital, to someone. The hospital did all their due diligence, followed HIPAA, they were compliant, they lost your information. This was just stuff that was lost that, hey, we didn't steal it.
It was a wallet found on the street, right?
Yeah, we just found it, and then we added it to a database and passed it along. And I also think that with the it's illegal until a company starts profiting from it. I think I've also seen last week tonight, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he did something on data broker, and he's like, the John Oliver, excellent. He did a segment on these data brokers, and he's like, the politicians aren't feeling the heat from this. So they're not going to make it illegal, probably because they benefit from the demographics and all of these case studies, and they're not in there with, their browser history is not out on the internet. The moment it is, then you're going to start seeing politicians going, okay, this needs to be illegal.
Well, so I got to pull out a comment, guys. I got to pull out a comment. Shikit said, right to privacy always reminds me that no one ever remembers the 9th Amendment. The rights we have aren't supposed to be limited to the ones specifically listed in the Constitution. And there have been multiple cases, like I'm going to go with the current Supreme Court, that's like, well, this isn't explicitly laid out in the Constitution, so we never read the whole thing, but we're going to make a judgment on it anyway. So sorry, throw that out there as well.
So okay.
Didn't we see that already too, though? Corey?
See what?
When the government did get leaked, right, and instantly
what? The whole
the emails that when I know what was it, the Fed emails?
OPM. No, hold on.
So which breach? There's lots of
hold on.
So
I was listening. I don't know if anyone's listened to the most recent episode of Darknet Diaries, but one of the points in it is that the head, I forget if it was the FBI or the NSA, but the head of that agency's SF-86 is still on WikiLeaks. Like it does affect politicians. Or I guess he's not really a politician. He's more like an agency head. But the point is, the point is, it does affect government officials, and they don't care, or at least they don't do anything about it.
So they're in there, and I think I was going to clarify that. It's like, it's not a matter that it's like when they're in that data set, but when they have like really embarrassing stuff in that data set, then they'll be worried, because you're right, they don't care. The stuff that's in there, they go, okay, I'm part of this data set, they know some of my history, they have my fingerprints, whatever. But when there's something like truly embarrassing, like the the browser history reference we made,
DNS records,
DNS records, stuff like that, and they go, it's like, okay, this now makes me look bad, and I now care. But again, what it takes for a politician to feel shame, I don't know.
I think that's the data breach we need. Like, here's the browser history of every single member of Congress. Like,
John,
they're going to be like, whoa.
John, I'll do some searching and let you know, because I might have a
couple out there.
Yeah, I want their Grammarly history.
They're great.
Yeah, I mean,
dude, I got to be honest with you. That's like, I've told the story many times. My spelling is so bad, and I'm not joking. Google periodically is like, dude, you're clearly trying to type French.
So,
like
you know what I thought was funny is because Grammarly had come up before, but they are GDPR compliant.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
good for
fine.
them.
That's all
Yeah.
end to end and all that good
for
stuff.
them.
I mean,
But
I
I mean,
don't know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they went through the process of that thing, right? Like, you know.
yeah.
Hey,
to
I
wrap
use
it all
them.
to wrap it all up with the joke, I think nowadays the NSA's biggest spending is just on Amazon gift cards because they've discovered that anyone will give up any intelligence in exchange for Amazon gift cards.
True.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Just say what is your SSN? I'm not going to tell you. Okay, what if I give you a $50 Amazon gift card? I will tell you now.
I will tell you whatever
All
you
right.
want.
Hey, all right, let's move on to another story. The gift that keeps on giving, move it. We're going to be talking about Maine government says data breach affects 1.3 million people. Personal information exploited through the Move It vulnerability between May 28th and May 29th. I don't know.
As a Maine native, I can say that's like the entire state.
I was going to
Yeah,
say
they're
The
like-
whole state.
it's got to be
Everybody.
most of Maine.
The information
Brokers are very happy right now.
I
So,
love how
okay.
they say like the stolen information possibly maybe will contain person's name, date of birth, social security number, driver's license number, other state and tax identification numbers. And then
Yeah.
some individuals had medical and health insurance information taken. Like,
So I will say, so
Oh
my
my
personal
God.
take, so on this, most of this government data sets, there's been a lot of them. These are all just required breach disclosures, and this data is unlikely to ever see the light of day, in my opinion. None of these government data sets have been published at all that I've seen. None of the government agencies,
Yet.
this is their whole, the CLOP group has like their code of ethics or whatever, and government agencies are actually they won't publish it. So I would doubt this will ever be published. It's probably just a notification because
yeah,
they're
but
required to.
does it have to be published, Corey? And the reason why I say that is if you're in an organized crime ring and you have all of this information, just think about the fraud you can commit. I mean, it may not be in a big data breach that's dumped somewhere out on like Mega, but it absolutely is going to be used in some fashion against some percentage of these citizens, right?
They're selling
I'm
it to
less
data
worried
brokers.
about. Yeah, I'm always less worried about exactly. I'm less worried about one group coming after me than everyone. Like that's me personally. It's like once it's a public data breach, anyone can steal my identity, whether it's a 12-year-old on Discord or like basically the number of people in the
That's
CLOP
true.
ransomware group are smaller than the number of people who could download it if it was public.
That's
and so
true.
it's like what we tell our customers about physical security versus online network security. The number of people who are going to walk into your office might not be zero. The number of people who are going to hack you from the internet is way bigger than the number of people who are going to walk into your office.
The other thing
right?
about this data too is that they have a financial incentive to not publish it because then they get it's not just a bad reputation. They don't really care about that, but it's that whole thing where you like go to
They
prison.
get their doors kicked down.
Yeah, their doors kick in. Yeah, that slows their business.
Well,
model down.
and that's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say.
Real drug dealers have done the same thing. What is it? One of the Mexican cartels are like, don't sell fentanyl. It's giving us. It's doing too.
Our Yelp reviews have never been lower.
Yes, exactly.
Well, isn't that like straight out of Narcos? Like you don't mess with the United States government, right? Did anybody watch?
yeah,
No,
well,
I'm the only one who watched
Yeah.
Narcos. Like
No, I
Alright, alright.
I get that reference.
okay, good. At least
I will
They-
say though,
one-
from the government's perspective, they don't care if it's been published or not. They're coming after you.
Oh, that's definitely true. But
Yeah.
if the heat gets so political that they can't, they're going to devote more resources. I mean,
True,
like, what's that
true.
rule, right? If the government, U.S. government, really wants you, you're done. They're going to get you, right? It's just a matter.
And that would apply
Yeah.
already to the CLOP group. The CLOP group is so in hot water that they'll never get out.
I love the
Very
clock.
much, yeah.
Like this, there's a line in this TechCrunch article. It says MSsoft lists Maine security incident as the 11th largest Move It related breach disclosed at the time of writing, behind Ontario's birth registry, the states of Colorado, Oregon, Louisiana, U.S. government contractor Maximus, several U.S. federal agencies. Are like as much as we're talking about this, it's like 11th in line.
They didn't
Oh,
make
there
the
are
top 10.
3,000 of these data breaches, and all of them. Yeah, no, the Move It stuff is unprecedented in size and scale, and that's why I said like the CLOP ransomware group has already trod on so many toes.
They're
Like
toast.
they're done. Like, yeah. I mean, it was too good of a 0 day. That's the thing. It's too good.
Well, and it's like that. I don't know if you remember the RSA breach a long time ago in a galaxy far away, where the Chinese were able to gain access to all of RSA's ASC tokens, or it's either an ASC file or an XML file, depending on the version that you were using. All of it. And they were able to gain access to a ton of organizations. Now, the backward in the channels in China, what happened is it was a lower tier group that successfully got into RSA. Once again, long time ago, it was an Excel spreadsheet that they were able to embed malware into. Who would have thought that would have been an attack vector? And they were highly successful. They did all kinds of things they shouldn't. And they actually all got in trouble by the higher ups in China, because this was not something that they should have just started using willy-nilly to exploit as many different people and groups as possible. It should have kicked up the chain to like higher tier hacking groups within the nation state. So yeah, it's totally possible that you can be too successful in your hacks.
So, okay, does anyone have any comments? Because I was going to address the Boeing thing because I had time to search.
All right,
secretly.
let's do the Boeing thing.
So on the topic of ransomware, this isn't Clop, this is Lockbit 3.0.
The upgrade.
So my take on this, I just looked at the data. Looking at it, it looks like a bunch of like infrastructure stuff. There's database backups. There's a bunch of like, let's see, there's Citrix Boeing backups. There's a bunch of Ivanti. Like basically, it's infrastructure backups. It looks like, which is kind of sketch. Definitely, there's always sensitive data in backups. We all know this from pen testing.
Does this feel like when you push your buddy to look over a fence? Where like you push him up and he's like, all right, what's over there? And then he's like, no.
Corey,
is that what I'm doing right now?
That's
exactly
what it feels
I'm
like
doing. But instead, I'm looking on the dark web. Basically,
so Corey,
my take on go ahead.
But I got a quick question based on what you said. Historically, from what we've learned about reporters going through and searching through these data files, a whole bunch of the things you just talked about are not going to be searchable by the tools that reporters would use, right?
Yeah, I mean, backup files, it depends on what it's a backup of. Like, just looking at the extensions, they're just .back, which they could be SQL files. They could be raw images. If they're SQL file, I mean, most of this stuff is, they could be encrypted at rest. And I will say, like, obviously it's Tor, so it'll take me like approximately 2 months to download this 28 gig file. But basically, the thing, my take on this is, Boeing is lagging behind in their response to this. They're way behind the curve. Like, they're saying like, oh, the files are published allegedly. Like, obviously they're just there on the internet. Like, what is their PR team doing? They're just like sitting. Are they struggling to open the files on their computers? I don't know. But like, just reading the responses, like, it's crazy to me that this large multinational corporation that has billions and billions of dollars is like, yeah, no, it's definitely allegedly published and maybe possibly we're still investigating. It's like, no, you're not investigating. Your data is published. Like,
it's out there.
You need to check the Telegram chat like a little sooner than this, buddy. Like, you know, that's my take on it. Is like, don't get me wrong, it's probably not a huge amount of data, but also like you can't just be like, maybe it's published. I mean, we didn't check the site. We don't negotiate.
From what you're
with
seeing, though, from what you're seeing on this data, from what you said, it doesn't sound like it's from like one S3 bucket. It sounds like they were in there for a while and got a lot.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Like sources are tough. I would say like in this case, they could have just popped some backup server somewhere, like, or maybe they just, it could be one S3 bucket of all their backups. Like, who knows? Like, it could. It's hard to like judge the scope of it. But I mean, they did specifically say it was limited to their global services division. I don't know what that division is, but it could be like, if I had to guess, just totally off the cuff, no cyber threat intelligence whatsoever. Some random contractor employee of this Boeing Global Services had an info stealer malware run on their computer. Their VPN credentials were in there. They logged into the VPN. They just pillaged everything they could grab and said, "We got Boeing."
Now, the most important thing that we have to ask was, did the CISO of Boeing have a compensation package in line with him being scapegoated for this? Because we know that's where this is headed, right? Like, we're all in agreement on that. Like, this dude's getting scapegoated hard.
Do they just pay you an SEC fines now? Is that how it works?
I don't know. That's what you need to do for a CISO. Like, if you're going to hire me in as a CISO, like, you have got to pay me commensurate with what we think the SEC fines may be if we get So,
and legal fees. Don't forget your legal
fees.
Also noted in the breaches, though, there are a lot of screenshots of Citrix and references to fixing Citrix. Yeah. So there's some thoughts around Citrix like the Citrix bleed. Yeah. And one other thing that I found was that with the Chinese bank, the ICBC, they had a Citrix NetScaler that was vulnerable until until just recently, and they got hit by ransomware. So, I mean,
You're
correlation,
saying,
causation, and
yeah.
everything there, but it could be that Citrix, and I think this is also that was also Lockbit as well, so it could be matching kind
You're
of the threat
saying
actors.
potentially they discovered the vulnerability and then Citrix patched it and then other people like published it? Is that what you're maybe?
Oh, that I think they may have been working on the Citrix, so I think that Citrix bleed may have been how they got into Boeing, how they're getting into ICBC.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, using that Citrix bleed, like it's like Heartbleed, so it's kind of a crapshoot whether you actually get anything useful. Like you might have to dump memory for a while before you actually get a token back.
Now remember, Joff wrote a tool called PowerBleed that was multi-threaded, and you could basically run it and dump almost all the memory off the system fairly quickly. It was a really, really cool tool for Heartbleed. So they might have done something similar to that.
True.
Yeah, and for something like targets like Boeing and ICBC, absolutely would be worth doing that types of dumping and processing. Most of us out there with the companies that we're at, probably not in our threat model, but someone like Boeing and international banks, sure.
Oh no, it's in everyone's threat model because all they do is they go on Shodan and just pull all the Citrix servers and then just
absolutely.
bash loop.
I want to pull some comments though that I think are awesome. Oh my God, Odorobos said, "Just leak details of the next generation battle drones. Don't worry, your personal data is safe." That's a really good one. And then Flackvest said, "Anyone want to start a company that sells SEC fine insurance to CISOs?" So be like unemployment insurance for CISOs.
Not a cult venture capital would like to.
Yeah, not a cult VC funding. Thank you. Flackvest is an advisor of ours. So
he's a board member. He's the CSO, some say.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the Citrix thing. I would like to pivot. One last story that I really want to get to is inside Denmark's Hell Week. As critical infrastructure was hacked, talking about that. I'm going to paste that one in so we can get it loaded.
Ooh, critical infrastructure.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So it's very similar to the idea of Move It. So what this was, almost all of the cases in Denmark were unpatched vulnerabilities in the Zixel firewalls.
Oh, the old
and
firewall.
Apparently with Zixel, I'm not sure, but I've never used Zixel, so I don't know. But the software itself is free, but you pay for the updates. And it looks like they just downloaded the firewall and they didn't pay for the updates. And there was a vulnerability that came out and they just got nailed.
Weren't we just talking about having to pay for updates?
Yeah, we were literally just talking about that. So I don't know. Like, I don't, maybe some other people that are in the news know that are in this talking about it know more about Zixel firewalls. But yeah, it's just another thing where they found, 16 different organizations that were using this firewall. They were able to gain access and then very, very quickly nailed them. And like it's saying right here, they basically went through after 10 days of silence and then came back in. But at that point, they were already compromised as well. So just absolutely just crazy. Talking about critical infrastructure and going after the firewalls for an organization. So,
what impact did it actually have? Did anyone actually like
they were used, I think, as part of a DOS botnet at some point.
Right, but did their power actually go off?
No, I don't believe it went off anywhere.
So it's not really Hell Week. It's just like, damn, I had to stay up late.
Oh, it's a bad week for their security team, right? I know that kind of what you're saying is there's people in the security team like, how could this possibly be any worse? It's like, oh, Sparky, it can get a lot worse.
That's my take is like, this is kind of a flamboyant article title of like, it's Hell Week, but like really it's just a security team. Like I'm sure there's a lot of security teams in this news show that have been going through many Hell Weeks that weren't published. Like, like a Hell Week.
No comment.
No.
The power's at least got to go out in my house for it to really be Hell Week. Like the guy's working the incident response, then he comes home and like he can't get his cold beer because the power's out. Now that's Hell Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like to say like the standard thing that you're supposed to say when this stuff happens, it's that critical infrastructure often means low budget and not getting not being within the realm of normal IT that would be like, hey, you should patch your firewalls, but just being like, oh yeah, it's a substation out in, the tulip fields of Denmark. We don't need to have a fancy Cisco,
Has anyone heard of Zixel firewall before this? I haven't.
No.
I feel like it's come up, but I mean, no, not really.
I
It's
just
not,
had to
like they might as well be
Amazon
using Linksys.
They've been out since '89, so
I still come back to, if these are companies or organizations associated with critical infrastructure, I mean, how was that decision made? It's like, should we pay for the patches and updates for our firewalls? No, it's not. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Why
at
would you?
Zixel?
Well,
no one knows what Zixel is.
So that that thought process of being like that the fact that they even need updates is an IT thing, not an OT thing. Like OT people are just like, how do you update a switch? I don't know. It's like a switch. You either turn it on or off. Like
it just works, right?
Yeah, it just works. Buy a new one.
It always works.
All right. So let's wrap it up. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. Those of you that came in Discord and in LinkedIn and YouTube, and I don't know what R is. Are we on Reddit now? Or maybe that's on
For those of you that maliciously joined.
Restream. Okay. Whew, that's much better. let's not bring Reddit anywhere near here. So thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.